Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to iteach Live. I'm excited for our third day together to just have a conversation with yet another teacher. This morning we have Daniel Rodriguez. Daniel, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us and have a chat about the teaching profession. I'm excited to dive into the things that you're doing inside and now outside of the classroom. To start, I kind of want to just learn a little bit about your journey, where your background is, and then kind of how you decided on the teaching profession.
Yeah, so, ever since college, I've been in nonprofit services. And so I've been working with youth and working for youth for about a good 16 years. And then so I moved to a major metropolitan area and started working for another nonprofit here. And then all of a sudden, just the hustle and bustle of life and becoming a father. Man, I was just spending a lot of time away from home and in a commute. I was commuting about 20 hours. And so I was like, hey, I love impacting youth. What's a way I can do that while impacting my family? And teaching is something I've always enjoyed. And so that's when I logged on to iteach and I got my certification and I became a teacher.
And that's fantastic. So how long have you been teaching? What subjects do you teach?
Sure. I've been teaching about 4 years now, and I teach science, middle school science, which is absolutely crazy at times.
So how many blocks do you have, or how's your schedule set up?
Sure. So we have 7 periods, and I teach 6 of them. And so I've been teaching, I taught 8th grade, I'm now teaching 6th grade, God help me, and now I'm moving to 7th grade next year.
Do you have a favorite? I mean, middle school science, you're covering a lot of topics. Do you have a favorite that you kind of feel your passion come out in?
Sure. I think our students get pumped up a lot about space. And unfortunately, when the pandemic hit, that's when we're leading into our space curriculum.
Yeah.
But, it's really awesome for middle schoolers to see how small they are when they realize how big the galaxy is and how big the sun is. And they learn that the sun's 99% of the mass of their solar system. It kind of shrinks their world. And it's a really beautiful thing for our kids to realize that.
Well, I think it's a good thing for all of us to realize sometimes as well. It's good to feel small sometimes.
Amen.
So I have some information here that I want to dive into because I know a little bit about what you do to engage your students. And it's kind of hard to kind of figure out exactly where to start. But I know that you feel strongly about student empowerment. So I want to kind of start there about what do you think empowering a student is and then what it looks like?
That's a really good question. What is it? And I would have to reduce that down to maybe one thing, and it's getting students to critically think. So many of our students come in with this, or they go through the didactic model of teaching where they get information from the knowledge source and then all of a sudden they regurgitate it. But to have our students take information and make it their own is probably one of the best ways to empower our students. I explained it to my students like this one time. I was teaching them about density and how the density of elements never change. And I was like, so let's say you're on in the street after you saw a Houston Rockets game and someone wants to sell you a gold chain. What's the first thing you think? My kids are like, oh, Mr. Rodriguez, it's got to be fake. I'm like, well, what if I told you I could teach you how to determine if that was fake by determining the metal's density? And so the students then grasp onto it. Now they understand that they have the information where they know they can't be fooled. And that's such an empowering thing for our students.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were speaking with a teacher yesterday, and the relatability and the applicability to lessons is crucial for them to be engaged and like you said, kind of latch on to that lesson and really dive deep into the material. What are some of the changes you see throughout the school year? So if a student comes to you at the beginning, what does their attitude and beliefs look like to their empowerment or their confidence in learning? Then how do you measure that throughout the year, or what outcomes do you see using the strategies that you've developed in empowering students?
No, that's a great question. I think I work with low socioeconomical students. I'm a Title I school here in Texas is what we call it. And our students come in with such horrific views of themselves. And I don't know if you're familiar with John Hattie's work on effect size, but students who think less of themselves tend to perform worse, and students who think highly of themselves have a 0.92 effect size, which means they can experience a whole year's of growth just if they believe in themselves.
Wow.
And so students who come in like that, they're like, well, I can't do this. Well, I don't know. And all of a sudden they give up. But what I show them is this, is regardless of their background, they have the ability to learn. There was a study done that socioeconomic status is only 0.5 or 0.5% of a student's growth. So it doesn't matter what background you come from. If you believe in yourself in such a way, you can really grow. And my students show growth like that. I'll have to tell you about a story named I'll call him DJ. But he, for the first semester, just failed miserably. But, in class, he would throw pencils, get mad at me every once in a while. But during a lesson one day, I sent my students off to do their independent practice. And I went back there and he had some Uno cards and I started playing Uno with him. And I just started building a relationship with him. And DJ did not become the A student that I wanted him to be. However, he did start taking his test, and he did see that Mr. Rodriguez cared enough to be flexible with him. Before the spring break, he got his first C on his test because I took time and because I didn't kick him out of class, because I didn't give up on him.
And what a great story, and hopefully that's one that DJ will remember for the rest of his life. Based on that story, I kind of want to extrapolate just a little bit. When you obviously have the data and the anecdotal evidence to suggest that socioeconomics and maybe student background doesn't necessarily have a significant role in their student learning year over year. Excuse me. But I'm curious, apart from engaging the one-on-one, how do you let them know explicitly that they can learn, that they can achieve? Is it just that? Do you tell them that, or what are the ways that you kind of embed that through your teaching?
Well, you just nailed it. I actually show them the data. So after each benchmark test that we do in our district, I show how my students match up against other students in the district and other students in the cluster. And it's brilliant to see when my students realize, and it's great so we have K level, which are our advanced students, and our on level students. It's amazing when our on level students, they see they are first in the district. So I'm not trying to toot my own horn, because it's my kids who do the work. But they score consistently in the top 3 and I'm in the district in Texas where it's the 3rd largest in the state of Texas. They score in the very top in science. And I tell them every single time, regardless of your background, I don't care what's happening at home. I don't care what you don't have. You have the ability to learn. And they see that through the processes and through me challenging them constantly. And so that's when they start to take on. Like, they'll clap for themselves and they'll do that. And I'll email their parents, and I'll let their parents know how good their students are doing. And so I show them the data and about how well they do, and it floors them. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's certainly inspiring. And the data, and you're in Cypress, is that correct?
That's correct. Cypress Fairbanks.
Yeah, a huge district. So kudos to you and obviously the students for putting in the effort. But it's certainly the individual at the head of the class has a role in that. So apart from your lessons and student achievement, you kind of touched on it with your DJ anecdote. What does it mean to you, and what does it mean to the students to actually be empowered?
I come from, I don't think our students actually know what it actually means to be empowered. Unfortunately, my middle school students aren't aware about what they're up against. I have a lot of students of color, a lot of Latino students, and they know what their parents say about what's around them, and they know what people think about them. And so, empowering our students to realize that they're probably going to have to work harder than the average student, especially being a student of color and coming from low socioeconomic backgrounds. It's a lofty hill to climb. And so for them to first recognize that, and then second to mitigate that, I think is empowering. And I guess I go about doing that just by, again, showing them what's there, but yet also showing them what's possible. And it was interesting. Again, in John Hattie's work, he was talking about, students aren't going to achieve unless you believe they can achieve. And so there's this thing on the effect side. It says estimated as teacher's estimation of achievement. And it talked about how if the teacher didn't believe that the students could actually do the work, they actually performed lower. When teachers actually believe that students can perform the work, they perform higher. And so I walk into my class every single day, because I have a master's in business. I have an MBA. And so I told them, like, I choose to be here. I'm not like one-offing, I show up every single day because I believe you have the ability to learn. I can do a lot of things. I choose to be here with you guys. And so it's really cool for them to take that, and they see Mr. Rodriguez is taking ownership, and then they take their ownership as well.
You just put a lot in. I was jotting down notes of all the things you just said. And I got to believe that last thing you just said is inspiring to students to know that you and your other teachers, I imagine, are the ones that believe in these students, and that reinforcement of belief and confidence coming from you and hopefully your team, where they often might not be getting it in their friend circles or at home, is so important to these kids. And I'm glad and proud that you're leading the charge and providing that confidence to them. I know you going through our program, one of the first questions we ask all of our teachers in the first course is, do you believe all students can learn? Because we feel that disposition as a teacher, and you just spoke to the science behind it, is crucial, that every student in that classroom on any given day has the ability to overachieve and to meet new, mountaintops kind of in educational successes. You mentioned the success of DJ getting that C, and maybe that's not the A that we're all striving for, but how was his response to see even like that little micro success over the course of the year?
You said how was his response to that?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So after I showed him the C that he got, he goes, "What? Can I take a picture of that?" I'm like, "Sure, DJ." He goes, I want to send it to my mom. I'm like, "Dude, scratch that. I'll send it to your mom. No worries." And so for him to actually be proud of, first and foremost, work that he does when he does no work in any other class, that was awesome. Like he was proud of that for once. And so he would show up to class the next day, and of course he'd be kind of lollygagging. I'm like, "Hey, DJ, I know you don't want to work today. I get it. I mean, I don't want to work either. There's space for that. But dude, you can do it, and you've shown me you can do it now." So now I have that in with him. Now he can't say I don't know, because
Right.
he's done it. He has that confidence, that self-efficacy that we were looking for. So the minute he got it, now he doesn't have any excuses, and I can hold him to the agreements that I know he can live up to. So and he did well, and again, unfortunately, we got hit by this pandemic right afterwards, and so I didn't get to see that fruition, which is really, really sad. Really sad.
Yeah, it's one of the collateral damages of many of what the pandemic's causing. But just thinking about that story and highlighting the micro successes of students, you talked about like what's possible and achievement, but also reflecting on just those baby steps are huge when progress is being made. I had the privilege to teach my son how to ride a bike last week, and he got, 30 feet before he lost his balance, and I was exuberant. I was super excited for him, but yet there's another kid just flying by him, and he was disappointed because he wasn't flying by yet. And I had to remind him that this is the progress. And now that, just like you said, we have a baseline now, and now we can grow from this baseline and riding a bike. And it's not about comparing to another individual. It's about comparing to where you've been and the accomplishments you've made. And so it sounds like you're doing a great job reflecting that with your students.
And I would add to that, like what I tell my other fellow teachers is we have to redefine the win for some students. It's not what's fair, it's what's equitable, right? So what's equitable for one student may not be for another, right? And so I think that's what saved me a lot of heartache as a teacher, is that I realized not everything's going to be fair across the board, but what is equitable for that student, and how can I define a win for that student, even if it's just him listening for 5 minutes. That's the win for the day. Right. Or him not interrupting me for 15 minutes while I give them mini lesson. That's the win. And so, as you said, it's a small stair step process that gets our kids there and helps them out, and teaches them how to adjust.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that stair step, I want to kind of jump into some of the strategies that you have, that you use in the classroom. Specifically, let's talk about the 3 agreements and quantum learning. Can you tell me about what those are and how you're using them?
Sure. So this quantum learning, man, is just phenomenal. I can't promote it enough. But what it is, it's a set of agreements that I've done and that we do. Quantum learning has us do on the first day with our students, and we just go through and we talk about, okay, hey, here are our classroom agreements, and instead of having rules, it's almost a philosophy of sorts. Like, don't get up, don't go to the bathroom, don't talk while I'm talking. This is more of something to help them manage themselves, right? Because that's how we know great classrooms are, when kids are managing themselves and managing their own learning. And so the agreements are as followed, and you can you can change this or adapt this as much as you like, right? But it's make the most of every moment. It's do what it takes, and it's remain open. So make the most of every moment. Come into class, instead of saying don't take out your phone, like, hey man, are you making the most of every moment? Are you getting what's yours, right? Because you're here to do something. Are you doing what it takes? Hey, school is going to be hard. You're not going to understand this. That's the reason why you show up 90% of the time, because you're here to learn something new. So do what it takes to get that information, to make it your own, and then remain open. Find ways to answer your questions. Raise your hand. Can I tell you, middle school students hate asking questions because they fear the stigma that they're going to get, especially my advanced students. I'm like, that's why you come to my class, to learn something. So don't worry about what your friends. Remain open, try to do these things. And so those are the agreements that we go through every single Monday. I have them on an anchor chart. Every Monday we read them. That's the very first thing we do. And then every single Monday preceding, we've done that. And even into the pandemic, every single week on my YouTube channel, I start out with my agreements, and I show my kids how they can live up to their agreements during the pandemic and in their schoolwork as well.
Agreement has a connotation of two ways, right? So how do you reflect or embody the agreement on your side? How do you set that example?
That's a great question. And that's absolutely right. Now, I know there's not a lot of space for us perfect teachers for us to be wrong, but we're wrong a lot. And so I'll be honest with you. I say sorry a lot in my class. And one specific example I'll tell you about, because there's many, because I'm wrong a lot. So there was a question that I didn't prepare my students for. And I remember the question. It was over pure substances of elements. And I did not give my kids enough practice on that for them to do it successfully. And so I told my kids, I was like, all right, guys, all my classes miss this right around 70% of the time. And I stopped right there and I looked at them and I said, students, this is my fault. I did not do what it takes to get you prepared for this question. And so Mr. Rodriguez owns this. Mr. Rodriguez owned this, and I promise you I'm going to do better next time. And one of my students goes like, I've never had a teacher apologize to me about that. And it's just really, really cool. And as you said, agreements go both ways. And so whenever I don't live up to my agreements, my students and I said at the very beginning, you can hold me accountable as well. And that creates such a great relationship, right? Because too many times teachers come in, we think we got to crack the whip and what I say goes. And man, it's just not like that. I don't think students learn in those types of environments very well.
Daniel, do you happen to be a father? Do you have kids?
I have 3 crazy little ones. Yes, sir.
I hear a lot of just parental wisdom and experience being played out in the classroom, which is often a kind of a stigma that teachers shouldn't be parents. But that's not to say that parents shouldn't use their experience at home in developing youth in the classroom. And so I can hear just in kind of your responses, probably some ways you also parent at the house. And I think, again, it goes back to empowerment, engagement. These students are probably hearing this for the first time. Maybe the students are hearing apologies for the first time, not just from teachers, but from a lot of people. And so you're getting to set an example that's really outside the bounds of a classroom that I think leads to a benefit in your classroom, because it empowers and engages. And so although there's a direct benefit to you as a teacher, I foresee them having great benefits from you being their teacher long after they leave your classroom.
Well, and to add on that, those agreements, what I do is at the end of the year, I cut it. So they all sign it and I cut it out and I give them a copy and I put their signature on it. And so the students have it for next year. And I tell them, hey, bring those agreements every Friday next year on Friday, and you can get a Jolly Rancher. And some of the students, like I would say close to 70% of students actually keep their agreements. And so they'll come and get a Jolly Rancher, right? But then I'm holding accountable. But I'm like, wait. Are you making the most? Let me see your progress report. And so I have tons of students just flowing in and out of my class. And I'll be honest, like 1 in 4 of my kids don't have a father, right? And so, I'm just that kid. Students want stability. Students want to be cared for, and students want to be held accountable. They may not say they do, but they really do. And so that gives me those future touch points beyond my class, that they know that Mr. Rodriguez still cares for them, even though they're not in my class anymore.
Man, that's fantastic. So I want to dive into another topic. You mentioned it. I'm excited to hear more about it. You said you have a YouTube channel. So tell me about Let's start with what is the YouTube channel for, and then I kind of want to move into what inspired it.
Sure. So I use the YouTube channel to kind of recap the information that I teach in my Google Classroom, because when you go through PowerPoints, that can be somewhat mundane, and so that's kind of where I go and I correct the mistakes that I see my students making on the questionnaires. And so that's what I use YouTube for. I find the most common misconceptions about what I taught, and I go and I address it on the YouTube, but in a more fun, engaging, and interactive way. I kind of have it set up like almost like a YouTube show. And so that's primarily the reason why I use it. And the second one is that a lot of my students don't have access to things like laptops and really good sound internet connections, and YouTube just seems to be seamless for them. If they have a really old Android phone, typically they can still access YouTube on it. And so that was the main reasons why I chose to kind of hit up on try to use YouTube as my venue, if you will.
And what's been the feedback from your students and your colleagues that know about it?
So my colleagues, I don't know if I mentioned this, I interview some of my colleagues on my YouTube channel because I want my students to have a sense of normalcy. That's another reason why I started it. I really wanted my students to know that every week we're going to still do our agreements, so I do that on the video, and that I want them to still have an experience with not only me but with other teachers. And so feedback's been great. Some of my students are YouTubers themselves, so they like to critique me on my stuff. But hey, it's all fun. Critique me all you like. And so I just try to make it fun and engaging, and it's been a good response. I have about 90% of my students watching the YouTube, while I have about 50% of them doing the work. Kind of funny, right?
Yeah, you need to start sliding in more and more into the YouTube and sneak that content in for them.
For sure.
So tell me about what's kind of changed for you. I mean, you mentioned the YouTube channel. What's been the challenges, or maybe the heartaches, or the joys of COVID-19? Has there been silver linings? What I want to hear from your perspective when you were told, "Hey, we're going home."
Yeah. Silver linings. Again, even me as a teacher, I have to redefine the win now, right? Because this is a whole new system that a lot of us are learning. It's tough because I know that my students who have the least amount of resources are suffering the most.
Yeah.
And so that's tough for me. That's tough for me because that's why I show up every day. Some of my students are fortunate enough to have the ability to do the online learning. And so what I love about this the most is that the learning is now theirs. I've been telling that to them the whole semester, guys. You have to make this your own. You have to critically think. This is your information. You have to make it your own. Now they're forced to. And a lot of my students will say in class, like, "Mr. Rodriguez, on board." I'm like, okay, well, I'm not Kevin Hart, and you didn't buy a ticket, so you're here to learn something, right? And that's what I tell them. That's what I tell them. Like, you're here to learn something. You're here to walk away so you can become a productive citizen at some point in time. Yeah. And now they're being forced to do that. And I'll be honest with you, I find that my students are having a great appreciation for school now.
Sure.
Like Mr. Rodriguez, I miss the classroom. I miss labs. I will take that any old day than having to watch things on the screen. So I believe that's a silver lining. I hope that that momentum takes my sixth graders and all students from here on out, for them to realize that education is a luxury, not necessarily something that they have to do. Because I'm hoping that that's an attitude change for them moving forward.
And then I'm curious about the ones that don't have access to learning, and I imagine there's a percentage of your students that are just disengaged. What advice would you give other teachers, or what are you doing to really try to understand the burdens of some of these students that are just not responsive right now? Their attendance is gone, and those things. I'd love to hear what you're doing, and then maybe a word of encouragement to other teachers that might be having the same impact.
Yeah, I'm no fool, and I've worked with kids long enough to realize that no matter what I do, life situations happen, right? And so the students that have gone dark, I like, we call it going dark because we haven't made contact with them. we know are due to socioeconomic situations, family situations. I've had a lot of my students actually pack up and go live with grandma and grandpa because parents are still having to work their jobs. And so they've just fallen off the map. And so, what's the first thing I do? I'm a person of faith, man. I pray for my students. I'll be honest with you.
Sure.
But the second thing I do is I try to make those weekly phone contacts with them. I get nothing. And so, my word of encouragement is that keep on trying, keep on, your kids need you. Your kids need that normalcy. Again, that's why I reached out to my kids through YouTube. They need to see your face. And so while you might be discouraged, as I'm discouraged at times, it's do your best and hope that the kids see that your efforts and know that you're still there for them, because it's tough for them and they do need you. They really do. A lot of my students really appreciate, again, the work that we're doing, but just don't give up, don't lose heart. And there's going to be a fall session here coming soon. We'll be able to tie up those loose ends, hopefully.
Yeah, that idea of persistence is, as much as it is challenging, is certainly needed. So
yeah,
any teachers out there listening to this, remain persistent. I think Daniel is setting a good example of weekly calls, even if there's not an answer, just to hope and be persistent that maybe next week they do answer that call, and or maybe they check out the YouTube. I think those are great things that teachers can be doing, provide that little extra effort during, just a really crazy time. So if you haven't been told, I want to say thank you for your efforts in the classroom. I am confident that your students and those parents find it meaningful, and so continue the great work. What are you looking most coming into this fall? Let's assume normalcy kind of comes back. What's your vision for this fall? Your hopes and thoughts?
Well, first, I want to say thank you to you guys for preparing me for this. I mean, everything that you guys have done has given teachers like me the opportunity to go and make the impact that we wanted to make. So thank you for what you guys do. And thank you for everyone behind the scenes for this awesome resource. Biggest hopes when I go back. There's just so many. I'm hoping that my students understand that this is going to be a long process that we're not going to make up in a month. Yeah. This is going to take years for us to recover. So again, just teaching my students and helping my students relearn the fact that this is going to be something that we're going to have to spend some more time on, because a lot of our students live in a world where fast internet, fast things, I want fast money, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to have to teach them that this is going to take work, right? And work takes time. And so I'm hoping that our students come with that wanting to work hard. And if not, we're just going to build it in them. And I'm just looking forward to giving some high fives, to telling some dad jokes because they love them so much, and that kind of stuff. But I just look forward to that, because I'll be honest with you, anything that I do in the classroom is predicated on the relationships that I build with my children. If I don't have good relationships with my students, nothing I say is gonna fall on deaf ears. So just looking forward to firing those back up.
Well, it's always been true, but it's especially true now that education's a long game. It's not a sprint by any measurement. And so I wish you the best in instilling that vision for them this fall, because there's probably going to be some arrears learning and catch up. And that's okay. We're all in this together. We're all in the same boat. Everyone's friends at different schools are going to be in the same situation. There's kind of a leveling of a playing field in that regard. So I wish you the best to finish out the school year and into the fall. Daniel, we're right up against time, but I want to personally thank you for spending time. And I'm hopeful that people tuning in can really glean some really cool things. I'm hoping there's a lot more teacher YouTube channels because of this, because I think that's an awesome idea. And what I'll do is, if it's okay with you, try to maybe share a clip of what you're doing as a YouTube in the comments of this, just to kind of show some of the work you're doing. So thank you so much for being a part of this today, and I wish you the best.
My pleasure. Hey, stay safe. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.